There is no logistical place you can open a gun store. You got to drive hours and hours to get to a gun store. Yes, that is obviously a Second Amendment violation, and that is not cool. We're the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about a gun range suing on Second Amendment grounds for their right to sell you firearms. We're going to talk about what's going on with this particular case. We're going to talk about whether or not you have the right to sell guns where you please. How far does the Second Amendment and does Bruen reach in protecting your Second Amendment rights? And finally, we're going to talk about why people hate lawyers so much. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And today's video is brought to you by our friends over at Vanish. We'll talk about them in just a moment. But a little bit of background on this case. We have the Gun Range LLC. This is in the city of Philadelphia. This case has been going on a long time. So they started back in 2015. They were a gun range. They were wanting to sell firearms retail side. And they fought with the city for a period of time over some zoning issues.
Right. I mean, specifically, right?
Yeah.
They are prohibited from selling within 500 feet of a residential location.
Yep.
And like undisputed, right? They're within like 50 feet on one side, 80 feet on the other.
Yep.
Right.
Yep,
Okay, continue.
Yeah. So they're saying, hey, look, this.
That's important to me.
Yes. Well, Emily wants everything banned in residential neighborhoods.
It's my sanctities, my home.
Sure. You'd think that they would have an issue with the range and not the sale.
You would think. Yes, that is, yes, bizarre, but go on with Philadelphia.
So our gun range, they want to, open up a shop, sell guns, fight with the city. They have to ultimately sue. In this case started, like I said, back in 2015. They worked their way up to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals knocked them back down the first go around because the trial court didn't address kind of these Second Amendment grounds that they raised. So then, in the meantime, trial court litigates Second Amendment issues. Enter New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen.
Big pause. New briefs.
Yeah, new briefs. Exactly right.
Slows it down further.
But we are back up on appeal for the second time. And if you want to check this case out, this is case number 90 CD 2021. This opinion just landed February the 27th, 2024. So this happened yesterday. This is a very, very new opinion. But the court is looking at a couple of different things. First, does a gun store have standing? Does a gun store basically have Second Amendment rights?
Does a gun store have Second Amendment rights?
Right. And three, is it de facto exclusionary? So our court does a couple of things here, but and this is where we get into our first question of, let's address standing real fast and then talk about, do you have a right to sell guns wherever you want? Because that's kind of ultimately what this court's talking about.
So standing is one of those things. It's really like, it makes sense when you really think about it, but it's kind of one of those sort of boring issues that people who aren't lawyers don't touch on very often. So in order to bring a lawsuit, you have to be hurt. You have to be wronged, right? So for example, if Richard gets, hit by a car, I don't get to bring a lawsuit for Richard's injury, right? Because I am not hurt. I do not have standing. I cannot collect monies on Richard's behalf, right?
Unless you get that sweet, sweet key man insurance.
Sure. Ooh, we need that. But more generally speaking, and really the way we see it applied is, let's say I am, the government and I'm suing, the federal government on behalf of federal law, right? We see the standing issues crop up there a lot. Is the state government actually wronged, or is it in fact the citizens who are wronged, right? And so it's basically determining who is harmed, right? Who can actually bring the lawsuit because they are personally affected and aggrieved by it in such a way that the law has said you get to be the one who's the plaintiff in this suit.
Yeah, and I think the trial court and the appeals court, standing is one of those issues where the court, if they want to wimp out and just say, you don't have standing, a lot of times they do that. They don't do that here. They say, hey, guess what? And we have a lot of case law from across the country in different jurisdictions saying that, retailers, they can sue on behalf of their customers' rights. So in this case, we got a retailer potentially selling firearms. It's customers. Customers have Second Amendment rights. So there's enough there.
Well, and not just that, right? Because I think the court also addressed this retailer is owned by people, right? And those people who own the Gun Range LLC have Second Amendment rights. So it's derivative there as well.
Yep. So we have two layers of, hey, look, yes, you have standing here. So they go on and look at this. Hey, did we violate, or is the Second Amendment implicated here? in the sale of firearms. And the court comes to kind of a tragic conclusion after doing a great job of analyzing the Second Amendment.
They do a really good job. They talk about Heller, they talk about McDonald, they talk about Bruen, they talk about, some just circuit court opinions that are also related. But ultimately, they say, we have this carve out basically for commerce and firearms. We had that carve out in Heller and McDonald. We have that carve out in Bruen and Kavanaugh's concurrence as
Yep.
well. And, this is just on the pure Second Amendment grounds. Does the commerce of arms implicate the individual right to keep and bear arms? And they basically say, not in this instance, at least, right?
Well, that's what they say, but that's bullshit.
Okay. This is where Richard and I disagree. Like, yes, obviously, if the government, and this is actually the point that is going to cause this case to be litigated again, is if the government is essentially regulating gun stores such that, they're like, you can't have a gun store within.
Yeah, you effectively can't engage in the Second
Right.
Amendment.
If they're saying you can't have it within the city limits, or if they are regulating in such a way where there is no logistical place you can open a gun store, you got to drive hours and hours to get to a gun store. Yes, that is obviously a Second Amendment violation, and that is not cool. However, Second Amendment aside, I will say, I love that, my little city won't let the vape shop and the Boost mobile store open in the strip mall right outside my neighborhood.
Sure.
I love that, right? So it's like, we got to look at this, we in my mind, I am with Richard that perhaps this is a dumb law, given that you can operate a range there. You're with 50 feet of a house and you're allowed to operate a range, but you can't sell guns. That is stupid. However, it does seem to me the answer is go to the city, get the zoning laws changed.
Yeah, and it raises kind of an interesting set of questions with, the how many degrees from Kevin Bacon, how many degrees from the Second Amendment? Is that the saying?
Sure.
Isn't it a Kevin
Yes.
Bacon? Isn't that a
6
game?
degrees of Kevin Bacon.
All right,
6
guys.
degrees of New York State pistol rifle versus Bruen.
Yeah, how many layers or steps out do we go before court starts saying, all right, we're not, this no longer, the Second Amendment is no longer implicated? Because ultimately that's what the court finds in this case, that the Second Amendment is not implicated in the sale of firearms. And that's where I disagree with it. I think, yes, if you cannot acquire firearms to engage in the right to keep and bear arms, wear, carry arms, then I think it's implicated. I don't think that that's too far of a separation.
I don't, but that's really what they're going to go back and determine now, right? Is that essentially they're saying, look, the trial court, you did not address these things at the trial court. So you've got to go back down to the trial court and you've got to argue that this zoning regulation is de facto exclusionary of the right to purchase arms, which is, I think a good argument, an interesting argument. If that is in fact true, then that needs to change ASAP. And you know what? I hope this gun store, if they end up operating, ultimately sells Vanish Holsters.
We got to talk about, between the two of us, we have tried out a lot of different holsters, and the Vanish Holster is by far one of the most comfortable we've ever used for everyday carry. With a 48-inch waist belt, the Vanish Holster offers a perfect fit for every body. I have one and love the adjustable belt, which is super durable and wicks moisture away.
The Vanish weighs merely 6 ounces, and because the pocket pulls your gun close to the body, there's virtually zero printing. The ambidextrous design ensures left-handed shooters can carry comfortably as well.
The Vanish Holster features 2 utility or mag pouches with enhanced non-penetrable trigger guard for maximum safety. However, when you need it, the magnetic closure allows an easy thumb break.
So Vanish actually sent us a test holster before we endorsed their product, and Richard and I fought over who got to keep it, and Richard actually won. And so I went out and I bought one for myself. That's how much I like this product. I carry around my children, my toddler, my baby, and I feel perfectly safe using this holster. Not only that, it fits virtually all of our handguns in the house. So it really is durable, it's multifaceted, and it's a great product. It truly is a perfect all-around holster for everyday carry.
Get 30% off now when you use the link below, plus an additional holster at half the cost of the already discounted price. Call that the friends and family bundle deal. There's really no downside. You'll get the most comfortable holster you'll ever own, or your money back guaranteed, and you'll have a great gift for someone. That is good grounds, because let's say you have a residential zone area. They don't let any businesses in. Well, guess what? Hey, gun store, you're not being discriminated against because we don't allow any businesses. And so that's really what the court's got to be looking at here. Are you focusing on just this particular business because of what they're doing? And at that point, if they're saying we're going to allow all these other businesses to engage in commerce, but we're just not going to allow this specific type of business, then it becomes kind of a different issue.
We will see interesting litigation play out ahead. Now, why do people hate us so much? Why do people hate lawyers? Well, no, I mean, I look, I've read the comments. I know why they hate the armed attorneys. But why do people hate lawyers generally so much?
This case started in 2015.
These guys wanted to open their gun store in 2015. It is 2024. We are on appeal of trial court decision number 2
of
and
5 possible more appeals.
Right, because they're gonna litigate this last issue. It's gonna get appealed up, and then what's gonna happen after that?
It's gonna go to their state Supreme Court.
Correct, and then
it's going to go to possibly to the United States Supreme Court.
So this is why, I mean, when New York State Pistol Rifle versus Bruen came down, and I think we all sort of, in our heart of hearts and in our fondest hopes, expected like the angels to sing and the world to change, and like, all of a sudden we were going to be really, really free. And of course, that's not what happened. And in fact, states started making really bad gun laws in response. I'm looking at you, New York, California, Hawaii, New Jersey. This is why they're getting away with that. And this is why the angels aren't singing the Second Amendment right now, is that we have 15 years. If this is going to make it to the Supreme Court, 15 years. This will hit PDR in 15 years.
Yeah, 2030.
2030. So, it really is, it's our fault. I mean, it's the legal system. It's the system we have. It's the best system in the world, but it is still very, very flawed. And you get it. You look at these judges and you're like I know why they have to do it. This is our system.
Yeah.
But it's also like, oh, you couldn't have just decided the issue and sped this up.
That's the frustrating part. And that's the frustration when I talk to folks about these things that I get. Because courts are kind of, their hands are tied. They can only address
they can only do what they can do.
And they can only address the issue that's in front of them at that specific moment. So instead of being able to just be like, hey, all this stuff is gone, we have to wait for each of those singular issues to wind their way through the courts and ultimately be litigated. It's so frustrating.
It is so frustrating. However, it is happening. There are good folks out there challenging these laws every single day, doing what we got to do. Is your right to sell guns where you want to sell guns, is that going to be protected in the state of Pennsylvania and ultimately in the nation? We will see, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please leave us a comment below. Do you agree with Richard that you should be able to engage in commerce wherever you feel like?
The right answer.
Or, do you agree with the wrong answer, which is that, you don't want the vape store right next to your house? Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.